The Center for Educational Media and the College of Education at Middle Tennessee State University are proud to offer professional development to K-12 educators in Tennessee through our online video library. These videos are aligned with standards set by the Tennessee Department of Education. For more professional development videos, check out our website at cem.mtsu.edu.
All right, everybody, let's have a seat, and Emily will begin the final portion of her presentation. So if everyone will have a seat, Emily, I'll give the floor back to you.
All right, so we're going to dig in. This was one of my smaller scale. We're going to build on the grander of this as we go. Okay, so teamwork is one of my favorite ones. This is actually in a regular kindergarten lesson. So the past couple years, my district has used Quaver as their curriculum, if you're familiar with it. We are moving to responsive school counselor next year, so I'm excited to kind of see how I'm going to redo some of my projects and things. But this was a lesson about teamwork, and I do love me some Quaver, do not get me wrong. But this lesson was just like, we're going to talk about teamwork. Hurrah. And so I was like, we need to do something with this teamwork, time to practice. And so this was a really fun, I don't even remember if I got this idea from a book or if this was just one of my wild, fangled, random ideas. But this is a no prep, no supply activity. We had to work as a team to build a tower out of our shoes, and the kids loved this. So I split them into teams. It just kind of depended on the classroom. Sometimes I was able to do boys versus girls. Sometimes I actually did a couple rounds of this where like I did a boys versus girls, and then I did number off and this group versus this group. And there were a couple times I even was able to split it into 4 smaller groups. So it just kind of depended on the class size. It depended on, this is a really great time filler. One class could not, this was toward the beginning of the year lesson. They could not sit on the carpet for very long. It was a challenge to make it through 5 minutes of a story. They were wiggling, they were rolling, they were not with me. And so one of the things that was really good about this activity and a lot of other STEM activities is when you know you've lost them, you can go ahead and do this, and you can do multiple rounds and make up all your time with multiple rounds. So that is one of the really beautiful things about this particular activity is it doesn't just have to be done once, it can be done multiple times. But I split them into groups and told them we were going to practice teamwork. So we had gone over what does a good team look like. We had outlined what does it look like to be a good teammate, what do they do, how do they communicate, what does that look like. We split into teams, and then we kind of talked as teams about what were things that were important to us as teammates. What were some things we valued? And so some of those pieces of conversation were things like, I want somebody to talk nicely to me. I don't want somebody to yell at me. Like, I want somebody to include me, not leave me out. Those were some different things that we were able to talk about of these are things that are important to me when I'm looking at being on a team. And then their favorite part is I let them all take off their right shoe. So everybody got to stand up and take off a singular shoe. They only could take off one, just one shoe. And they had to build a tower out of their shoes. And we were gonna see whose tower was the tallest. So I think I had a ruler. So I measured it to see whose was taller. We talked about different strategies after they did it. Like we'd knock it down and be like, what could we do to improve our tower next time? How could we build it a little bit different? And then maybe we did a second time. Depending on the group, depended on how much time I gave them. I think I started out with like 2 minutes for kindergarten. But that also changed with each kindergarten group because we know every kindergarten classroom is a little bit different. And so they built these towers and they just giggled. This was so fun. They started giggling before, like as soon as they took their shoes off. They thought that was hilarious that I let them take their shoes off. And they laughed and we all like talked about stinky feet and you gotta wash your toes and you get a little bonus hygiene lesson in there. Everybody gotta wash their feet. But it was really fun and we talked about like, how could we build this differently? And we'd sit down as a group and practiced like stacking a shoe and putting the top of the shoe in one way or this way or that way, and got to listen to ideas from the group of how would we do this a little bit differently. So this one was really fun. Again, in a 30-minute lesson, pretty much zero prep. You could do this with whatever curriculum you use for teamwork. If you read a book, if you talk about teamwork, whatever you do, this is a great activity. Choose your own adventure with robots. So I worked with my tech teacher, and she gave me some robots that she did not use anymore. So that was really fortunate for me. That was really cool. The kids also came in knowing a little bit of how to use the robots because she had worked on it with them, so they had some previous knowledge of these robots. This is also something, if you think robots are really cool or you think you would use robots a lot, they're really not that expensive on Amazon. If you search like Kinderbot's a really famous one. It's like $30 for one. Very simple. But you can also get some sets of robots on Amazon. If you've got people that like to donate to your wish list, that's a great one to do. But we read one of the Choose Your Own Adventure books. I think this is What Should Danny Do or What Would Danny Do? But there's tons of Choose Your Own Adventure books out there, tons of them. And you can find them for whatever you are talking about. We talk a lot about responsible decision making and making good choices, thinking about what's going to happen, thinking about how our choices impact the future. That's a big thing that we talk about. And so I actually did this lesson at the very end of the year. We did a little review of all the topics that we had covered that year, and then we applied a lot of those topics to our reading of this book. So it was kind of a wrap-up lesson of like, let's think about what we've learned this year. How could we use the skills we've learned this year to help navigate through this person's day? So you can obviously do that with just the book, but we added a little fun technology piece to it by adding the robots. This is the first time I did it, and I was a little overzealous on it. I literally made a page for like every ending. So you can kind of see it on here. You can see like the clip art pieces and all those things. Later on, I learned and I made choice 1 and choice 2 instead of 74 choices for them to go to. So as I read the book, I'd say, okay, choice 1 is this, choice 2 is this. Which choice are we going to make? And I actually let them do this in teams. So I think I have 4 of the little mice robots. So I split them into groups of 4, and they each had a paper that said choice 1 or choice 2. And they could choose how they wanted to set up where their choices were. Some of them had choice 1 up here and choice 2 down here. Some of them had them diagonal, whatever. It didn't matter to me. They got to pick where that piece of paper was. And then as a team, each time we got to that choice in the book, they had to decide which choice they were going to make as a team. And then they had to code their robot to drive to that choice. So it was a really fun little activity. The robots are very easy to use. You also could do this with like Matchbox cars, like drive them around. Not quite as technology as the robots, but also fun. This is also a very adaptable one to use any technology that you have at your school to help them pick between 2 choices, right? So think about those technology pieces that your school uses. What are some of those things that you might have access to as far as technology goes to integrate the technology into this lesson, having them work as a team to select the choice and go to the correct choice. The kids love doing the robots. It was much more interactive than us just reading the book and discussing it, so that was really nice. It was the first time I used the robots. It was a learning curve the first time I did it, but it was really cool. It was really fun. Calming tools creation. This one was really fun. So this was a first grade classroom. The teacher came to me. She had one kiddo in particular who was really struggling to regulate, really struggling. And it was a domino effect. When he would not regulate, then this other person would not regulate. And then the next person would not regulate. And it was just like, by the time we were done, everybody was spiraling. So everybody was out of control. And we have calm corners in all of our rooms. She had worked with this kid on using the calm corner. That was something we had done that I had come in and worked on. And we were like, we just got to do something. Like we just got to keep trying. We got to keep trying with this kid to get them an ability to regulate. And so one of the things that I mentioned before is I really think STEM has that ownership in it, like that ownership piece. And so we built calming tools as a class that they were able to use. So this, I did some good old Googling to figure out what I wanted to put in these things. But I literally used empty water bottles, empty Coke bottles, whatever. I sent out an email to the staff and said, hey, bring me your empty bottles when you're done. I need them for a project. And I think I got like some food coloring and some glitter and some different things like that. But we read a book with this. Before we did this activity, we read a book about some calming strategies and some visualization strategies specifically, how to use some visualization strategies to help your body decompress and calm down. And then we built these sensory bottles, and then we practiced with them of like shaking them up and then sitting them on the desk and watching them and like breathing as they came down. And so when I left from that lesson, every kid in that classroom had a calming tool that they had created themselves that they got to keep and they got to use, because some of the problem was we had a couple kids monopolizing the calm corner and other kids wanted to use the calm corner, and then what do you do? So now everybody has something on their desk that they made, that they got to put their hard work into, that they can use. And it was also really nice for her to be able to direct them to it because it was on their desk. So when she could see so-and-so start brewing, she'd walk over and just shake the thing and put it back down. So it was also a good visual at the desk to kind of help cue kids when they were starting to feel elevated and escalated to redirect and kind of use those strategies we talked about. So this was really fun. The kid in particular that we were very focused on really enjoyed this. So that was really sweet. So anti-bullying is a big one that I do PBLs about, because how many of you all teach bullying every year? It's a state law. It gets a little monotonous after you've done it 900 times. I could repeat the bullying definition in my sleep. I think I actually had a dream the other night because someone at the dance studio had asked me about the definition of bullying because someone had said they were bullied, and I was like, absolutely not, that's not bullying. And so I ended up dreaming about it later that night, about the definition of bullying. So it is ingrained in my soul. But it's really important to talk about. Bullying still happens as adults. It happens all over. It's important to talk about. And so I have done a lot of projects with anti-bullying. These are really fun to do in October because it's Bullying Prevention Month. So we talk a lot about what does it mean to prevent something? What does that word prevention mean? Trying to put a stop to it ahead of time, trying to keep it from happening. And so we talked about what are some things that you've seen that help prevent things. And a lot of times they talk about commercials or billboards or different things that they've seen. I always use the example of the Smokey the Bear saying, only you can prevent forest fires, as a good example of like, what does that mean to prevent a forest fire? Well, you don't leave your cigarette in the middle of the woods. Like that helps prevent. You do things ahead of time to set yourself up for success. And so we talk a lot about that with bullying. So a lot of times I teach my bullying lesson, like whatever it is for that grade level content. I will teach that lesson. I will go over the definition. With my older kids, I usually go over like the board policy on bullying, of what the board policy says this is bullying and what happens if this is the process of what happens when bullying happens. Because I think education is power. If you know that this is what's going to happen if you bully, that tends to make you not want to do it. So we always kind of go through that nitty-gritty piece of bullying with the older kids especially. And then I usually do a follow-up lesson of a project. So I've done quite a few lessons. My favorite one is the story quilt. You're going to see that in a second. This year I did stickers. I have done posters. I have written a book. This one is a really easy one to do a project because we're talking about prevention and preventing things. So literally anything you can think of as far as like messaging of prevention, it's a great project to do. So this is my story quilt. It is still hanging in my office. It's one of my favorite things in my office. The kids, this was made by 2nd through 5th graders. So I did this with multiple grade levels. And so some of those kids that were in 2nd grade are going into 5th this year. So they still remember doing this and they like to see their quilt in there. This idea sparked from, I was talking with some people earlier. There is a couple books that I use to help spark ideas. There's STEM for the School Counselor and STEM for the School Counselor 2. I don't know who the author is, but they exist, and I could find that out for you. They are on Amazon. This idea stemmed from that book. There was a story quilt lesson that was in that book. It was not bullying, but I liked the idea of the story quilt. I thought that was a really cool idea. And so how this went was our ask was, how can we promote anti-bullying here at GMA? That was the big question. And then I did guide them a little more than I normally do on this one. When we moved into Imagine, which is our research piece, we watched a video about what story quilts were. So we learned about the history of story quilts, how during the Civil War time, story quilts were used to hang on porches to give symbols of safe houses for the Underground Railroad. They were also used by people who maybe didn't know how to write to tell the family lineage. They were used to tell stories and to keep memories and to document history by people who had the skill to make a quilt, but maybe didn't have the skill to write things down. So we learned about how those were used in history, where they came from, what the idea of a story quilt was. So that was their Imagine. That was our piece of research. For Plan, they got a piece of paper, and they had to plan what they wanted their quilt square to look like. So they had to draw a picture, figure it out. They were able to use their laptops and do some research of their own on this. I told them, I was like, you can look up anti-bullying quotes, anti-bullying posters, anti-bullying anything. Look it up, see if you can find some inspiration. We also talked about, like, don't rip off somebody's idea. I don't want you to give me verbatim what's on this thing that you just Googled. But look and see what's out there. Get some ideas, glean some understanding from some things that are out there. So they had to plan it on this piece of paper, and then when they brought their plan to me to get approved, because you couldn't draw me a smiley face and that be what it was. We're talking about anti-bullying here, right? So I don't need a smiley face that's going to go on the quilt. I need something with anti-bullying messaging. And so we talked about what does that mean? What does that look like? Gave some clear parameters of these are some things that have to be on this quilt. Once they got approved, I did have a donor who helped me purchase these. Shout out to my mother. She's great. She helped me buy these squares. They were not super expensive. I bought them off Amazon, but I bet you could go to, like, your local Hobby Lobby or your local crafting store and see if somebody would be willing to donate some of these items. But I purchased these. These were just fabric squares off Amazon, and I bought like 3 different colors. And I bought fabric pins. And so the kids, once they had made their plan and had that done, they were able to go and actually put their plan onto the fabric piece. And then when we improved, we talked about, like, no one wants a singular piece of fabric with this on it. How can we make this better? So we talked about putting it together collaboratively, like taking your piece and taking my piece and putting them together to make them into this large quilt. And actually it was a kid's idea on how to do this. I started just like collecting them and was gonna like figure out how I was gonna sew them or glue them or something later. And one of the kids was like, why don't we staple it? And I was like, why don't we staple it? Let's try. What's the worst thing gonna happen? I'm gonna take the staple out and we do something different. So this is fully sewn together by staples that the kids stapled themselves, which was really nice. So when they would come over, I would help them attach and like show them where to staple, but they each actually got to staple their pieces together. So they got to physically do that. And this hung up in the hallway for a full year. Now it's up in my office, but there's some really good ones on there, just some different messages of anti-bullying, different pieces, but we made our story quilt of anti-bullying, and that one was really fun. This one took me, it was a regular bullying lesson, like a regular 45-minute, because that's what I do with 3 through 5, do 45, K1 and 2 do 30 for me. So this was a regular 45-minute lesson for the bullying lesson. Then when I came back, it was a review of what bullying is, and then this was a 45-minute lesson. So they were able to get all of that done in about 45 minutes. And then I just carried this large quilt around to every class, toted it around so they could just keep adding. So it was really good. This year, I did stickers. So very similar idea to the story quilt. Very similar in your messaging is about anti-bullying. We're putting it out there. to stop bullying, quit bullying, all of those things. So very similar parameters of you have to have anti-bullying messaging. I don't want a smiley face sticker. Like I want a sticker that has something to do with not bullying. So again, did the first lesson. We talked about what bullying was, all of those things. Came back, we talked about prevention. We talked about anti-bullying messaging. And then for Imagine, I had made a video of myself making these stickers, of how to make these stickers. And so how we did it, it was very easy. This idea for me came because we had leftover supplies that needed to be used. We had done a STEM project that we had over-ordered packing tape for. And we had packing tape coming out our wazoo in the front office. And I was like, I can use that. I'm really good at using things that are available. And that's kind of where I came up with the idea for it from, was that we had extra packing tape. So all you have to do for this one is you get wax paper. So you put out a piece of wax paper, the kids each get a piece of wax paper, and then they have to put packing tape on the wax paper. So I gave them like 3 pieces, told them they had to overlap them so that it was like, that's your sticker back. So they need to be connected. They don't need to be like free going. And then they made their design. I also had little cardstock cards. Again, we had an excess of them from summer learning camp that no one had used, so they became my supplies. And I was like, ooh, that's a good size, that's a good texture, that's a good weight. Perfect, we're gonna use those. So they made their designs after they had planned them. They had to show me their plan, show me what they wanted to do before they actually physically started doing it. But they made their designs on their little piece of paper, and then they had to cut it out. And then you put that on top of your base layer. So you've got packing tape, picture that they drew, and then you put more packing tape on top of it. And so when you go to peel the wax paper off, it is a sticker that they can actually physically stick to the wall. So very simple. I needed paper, I needed packing tape, I needed wax paper. For the whole 3rd through 5th grade, I used 1 roll of wax paper. I did not need a lot because they were small little stickers. But we made these, again, a 45-minute lesson. It was a secondary lesson. And then this was my bulletin board that's up outside my office. So it's actually still up because I didn't change it out at the end of the year because I really liked it. And I run the student council as well. So my student council members came up with the Stick Up for Yourself and Others slogan. That was one of their ideas that they came up with. So we put that up there. But yeah, this has got all the stickers of the kids who made a sticker in the project, and it was a good display and a good conversation about bullying prevention. We also wrote a book. So this one was a little more convoluted. This was one of the first ones I did, and it was a learning curve. Okay, it was very learning curve. But we had 5th grade submit ideas for a book. So we did this earlier, I think I did this later September, early October, because we ended up using the book on Halloween, which I'll tell you about that in a minute. But we had 5th graders put in submissions for ideas for a book. That was their idea. And so they put them all in. We selected the top one. I had like a panel of teachers help me select the winning idea. And then we also selected like the winning person whose idea it was, and then like the next top 5, we brought them in for a collaborative session, and they wrote the pages of the book. So they actually wrote out the story, and it was a story about anti-bullying. So once we had the story written, we took each page to a classroom, and they had to do the illustration for the page. So each classroom had a different page that they were illustrating. We took up those ideas, we selected the top one from each class, and we put them together in a book. So here, this is at an assembly where we announced whose illustrations were in the book. So they got to come up and get a copy of the book that they had written. And then I ended up using this book to read to K1 and 2 when I talked about bullying. It was really fun. It was about markers. It was a bunch of markers were the characters. And a bunch of us teachers got together for Halloween and dressed up as the markers. So that was really fun. That was our storybook character, we were their book characters. So that one was a little more convoluted. If I were to do this again, I probably would do some things a little bit differently, but it was fun the first time we did it. All right, so large scale projects. We're gonna kind of move into some of those larger scale things. Big thing to consider is your logistics. Like I've shared over and over, my situations different from other people's situations. So when you are planning a larger scale project, think about your logistics of where can I do this? Whose room can I be in? Who's willing to let me take up their time? All of those pieces and parts are really important to consider and nail down before you start this project, or to have a think partner to help you think through those logistics. I know I have one person in my building who is one of my really good friends, and anytime I do a large scale project, I go to him and pitch it first because he's gonna tell me where all the holes are, and I can fix those before I pitch it to somebody else. So that is really helpful. Find your people that can help you think through logistics and make sure you are doing all the things. This is my favorite project I've done. We are on year 4 of Shark Tank. It is so much fun. I don't know about you all, especially elementary. I feel like my college and career lessons are a little bit monotonous sometimes. It's like, you can be anything you want to be. Let's read this book about 47 careers. Woohoo, we can do it. And so, yes, great. And that's one of the things I focus on, especially in my primary grades of, you don't need to know exactly what you want to be when you grow up in first grade. You need to know you can be whatever you set your mind to, and here's about 40 million options, and you need to start thinking about what's interesting to you. What do you think is cool? What do you think is fun? So I was trying to find, the idea came from, I was really trying to find something a little more meaningful to do about careers other than just reading a book and saying, you can do it. Because I felt like that's all I was doing. Like, being a cheerleader, here's a bunch of options. We'll see you in a couple years, see what happens. And so we introduced the idea of entrepreneurship was where we went with it. So I start out the lesson reviewing careers. What is a career? What is a career? What is it that you do? And then we talked about what is an entrepreneur, someone who starts their own business. So I usually have a few examples. And then we also talk about there are entrepreneurs who come up with brand new products. They see a need and they come up with a product, and that's what they build, and they start from the ground up. And so I actually have a former student. She created pillows that have a handle and a pocket on them, and she created them because she kept losing her glasses at night when she was reading. And so that the pocket is for her glasses and for her book. And so she started making these, and her mom's a rock star too. And her mom made her like an Etsy shop and like started doing this. And then the news picked up on the story. So there was a fabulous news story for me to use of an actual student that'd been in their shoes and in their building and in these same classrooms who was an entrepreneur at the age of 12. So I got to use those as examples of, you don't have to be an entrepreneur, you do not have to come up with a brand new idea, come up with something brand new under the sun, but you also can. If you've got an idea for something that's big that you want to do, or you see a need for something, you can create that as well. And so their learning intention for the day talks about that they are learning how to think like an entrepreneur. So we're using our thinking brain and our success criteria is we are successful when we have created a prototype of a product that uses our empathy. So we really hit a lot of big things on this one. We talked about what a prototype is. It does not have to be what you're about to put on the shelf, right? A prototype is your first draft. It's your first idea. I'm not gonna have, if I'm selling plastic water bottles, I don't have access to make a plastic water bottle with a machine in 3rd grade in a classroom in a day. But I got cardboard, and I can make it in the shape that I want it to make it, and I can label it and say this is going to be plastic when I go to sell it, right? So we talk about what is a prototype. You are building a prototype, an example of what you want to build, and you're going to share what you will build it out of eventually. We're creating a prototype of a product. So we talk about how a product is something that you physically sell, and you have to use your empathy to create this product. So we talk about looking for the needs of others. So what is something that you see as a need in our community, something that you care about, something that's important to you, important to somebody you care about, and how can we use that to build a product? And so we watch a clip from Shark Tank. There's a really good one of a girl who, she makes Baby Tune is the name of the product. It's a spoon It's also a toy, and it's silicone. And she talks about in the clip how she made this because she has a baby sister who she kept hurting her gums because she was chewing on the spoon. And she also wanted to play with the spoon. And so it has like a connector so that the spoon doesn't drop on the floor. You can put it on with a passy clip. So she goes through this whole story of why she wanted to make this specifically because she cared about her baby sister. And so we talked about how did she show her empathy in that, right? So how did she show care for someone? It doesn't necessarily mean that you've got to come up with a product that shows care for an entire community. It might be about your baby sister. It might be about your neighbor. It might be about your classmate. What is something that you care about or you see a need for, and you create that product. And so that is our success criteria for the day. We're successful when we've built a prototype and presented that prototype to a team of sharks, which always gets everybody, they're like, present? What do you mean we're presenting? I'm like, you are gonna get up and talk about this. You're gonna tell people about it. And so what the day looks like is we spend this is a full day project. I go into third grade. This is my big one I do after TCAP. Great time. We start in the morning. I spend the morning talking about those career connections, entrepreneurship. What is that? What do those things mean? Present our learning intention and success criteria, get that all set up. And then we use our ask. How can we create a prototype of a product that shows empathy? They spend some time researching. And so we talk about how you can use other things as ideas, but you don't want to copy somebody else's work. I've had a lot of cups over the years that marry a cup in a snack box or a cup in a phone. Somebody did one because their teacher kept losing their Stanley and their phone all the time. So they made a Stanley with a phone connector to help him not lose his stuff. So they were at least together instead of in two separate places. So we talked about how that's fine. You can marry some ideas together, right? You can't rip off somebody's idea and make it your own, but you can take a product and maybe improve on it or change it or adapt it to make it two to come together. So they get some time to research and come up with ideas. Some of the things they have to research are like, what materials would I make this out of if I actually made this? Because that's some important information. What would I actually use if I was making this product? Some things about what do those materials cost? What's the cost of that? So those are some things they have to research, and then they have to plan. So they have to draw out what their product is. When they plan, they have to write a sentence or at least a bullet point about how they're using empathy, like why did I decide to build this? That's part of what they have to do with their plan. And then they bring the plan. Generally, I teach this with the teachers in the room, so they can bring it to me, they can bring it to the teacher. There's a couple extra adults in the room to kind of hand this off to. They have to bring the plan to an adult to be approved. They're working as a team, so that's fun. Sometimes we have to intercept and say, oop, you got to share your ideas. You can't have one person's idea and then railroad everybody that's the idea they're going to do. You have to all agree on this idea. So they have to work as a team to do it. And then once it is approved, they get to build their prototype. And then after they have done their build, for their improve, they have to write a script of how they're going to present this to the sharks. And I've done this a little bit different every year, and a lot of it has depended on that particular group of third graders and how much scaffolding that group particularly needs. Sometimes I give them bullet points of you need to say this, this, and this. But they have to write the scripts where they include information about who are their team members, why they chose to build this project, who does this project help, how is this product going to work, what's it going to do, what materials would I build this prototype out of if I was actually producing it. And then we actually pull in a little bit of math, and I usually pull my teacher in for this part, and I'm like, help me figure this out. They have to do a little bit of research and do an estimate of, I think it will cost me this much to make this product. I'm going to sell this product for this amount, and my profit would be this. Now, is that always fabulous math? No, sometimes it's I'm going to make this product for $2, I'm going to sell it for $1 million. Not real, but at least we're thinking about the math of it cost me money to make this, then I'm going to sell it, and I can only make as much money as the difference is, right? So we talk about that math piece a little bit. That's something that my third graders are working on in math at that time of year, so it really connects. Again, my teachers are in the room with that, so they kind of help. They step in and help me do that piece so that it's better than me. but they've got that math piece. And then I usually bring in a panel of sharks. Depends every year. Our academic coaches have served as sharks. Our principals have served as sharks. I had our safety patrol and student council members serve as sharks one year, our 5th graders to our 3rd graders. And they select a winner from each classroom. And then that winner from each classroom gets to advance on to the school Shark Tank. So this is a picture from the school Shark Tank. So these were our top 4 teams. The one that won, which was actually my son's idea, and I completely stayed out of it. I did not pick who this was, and I was like, really, we had to pick my kid. But his teams was a robo-ref. Like I said, my kid's a big baseball player. And it's just not fair how those parents yell at those refs. That was his empathy piece. It is just some of those parents, they're just not nice to those refs, and it's not fair because they're just doing their best. And so the robo-ref would be programmed to make all the right calls, and it would know all the programming, and it didn't matter what sport it was. So these big sports teams, and he had another friend on the team that was big into soccer. He's super big into the World Cup right now. So it was programmed, these soccer teams could buy this robo-ref. That's who could do it. But the empathy piece was, we care about these refs. These people keep yelling at these refs. That's not fair to the refs. They're just doing their best. And so that was actually the winning one. But they had to talk about, okay, if this was really a robot, like we would build it out of metal, and its knee would move like this, and it would have programming inside of it, but it was a cardboard robot that they built. When they moved on to the school-wide one, I get new sharks. I usually invite people from our district to come. A lot of times I'll invite local entrepreneurs, so make some community connections to come in and help do that. And they have a criteria where they circle and give points and all of those things. And then I just do the math at the end to see who the winner is. And then the next day after that was our end of the year awards. So I handed off the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd place at the end of the year awards. So that was really fun. All right, our Christmas market is another big one where we also talk about entrepreneurship. So I started this one a couple years after I had done the Shark Tanks. So most of these kids, obviously we have some transient kids. We have some kids who come in after they were in 3rd grade. They weren't here in 3rd grade. They didn't get to do Shark Tank. But most of my kiddos had participated in Shark Tank. So they had some basis knowledge of entrepreneurship. So we went back, looked at that, rethought about it, revisited Shark Tank, talked about what an entrepreneur was, what they do, etc. And we do this one, usually we do this Thanksgiving. Oh, we have a weird Thanksgiving break, so we go Monday, Tuesday before Thanksgiving. So I do this with 5th grade on that Monday and Tuesday. So again, this is my 5th graders. And 5th grade at the time that we do this in social studies is learning about assembly lines. That's one of the pieces that they are learning about. And so for their success criteria for this, they are successful when they as a team have come up with an assembly line and created 20 of a product to sell at this Christmas market. And so not only do they have to decide what product they're going to make and sell, they also have to design how they're going to assemble it. So sometimes that's as simple as student 1's going to make this part, and then student 2 is going to staple it together, and then student 3 is going to tie a ribbon on it, and then student 4 is going to put the price tag on. But we use that knowledge of assembly lines that they are working on in social studies and apply that into this process. So the ask is, what is a product we can make 20 of using an assembly line to sell at the Christmas market, specifically to 2nd grade. 2nd grade is learning about money. So 2nd grade comes and actually gets to spend money. So they get fake dollars and they get to spend it at the Christmas market. So it's a double good because 2nd grade gets to learn about, use that money skill. So they work all day, they figure out as a team what product they're gonna make, they use their assembly line, they make their products, we store them. Then for Improve, 1 year I did it myself and 1 year I worked with the art teacher. For Improve, they have to make their advertisement for their page, for their table. So 1 year I worked with the art teacher and she helped them make posters. So I had a shared Google Doc with the art teacher where I had the name of who was in each group, what the name of their product was, and then they also had to come up with their price that they wanted to sell. And they had parameters of, each second grader is going to have 10 fake dollars. So you don't want to pick to sell yours for $10 because that's the only thing the second grader is going to get to buy, and they're not going to want to buy one thing. There's 47 things around here. They're going to want to buy a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and a little bit of this. So set your price at a good price that people would want to buy this for, all of those details. So they got to pick their price. They made their banners. They made their posters. So we do this on the half day before Christmas break, which is why you see some kids in pajamas. It was also pajama day. But we set up, one year I did the gym, year I did the cafeteria. They set up their tables and they sell their products, and the second graders love it. And a lot of times I've just now started to see kids who shopped at the Christmas market are now old enough to start building for the Christmas market, and they remember shopping at it as second graders. So that's really sweet, and are excited to get to do that full circle moment. So we also give out bonuses. Our fifth grade team uses an economy system for their rewards. So that's what they get in the classroom. Like they get school dollars for things. They also have to pay rent in their room, like for their desk. So we actually turn whatever it is that they make, they earn that for their school dollars. So there's like actual reward for them. They get to keep those school dollars. And then we also, myself and the fifth grade team, we watch and give out bonuses. So like one year we had a kid who they had $1 left, and something that the kid was selling was $3, and he was like, I'll give you a discount, and gave the kid the thing because he only had $1 left. And we gave out a bonus for that. We're like, look at you, like caring about the second grader. Bonus. We gave out bonuses for good marketing. We had some kids who came up with some great marketing things. So we just look for good things that they're doing and hand out bonuses for those as well. Some products we had, that one's paper squishes. We've had mystery grab bags. Those are really fun with different pictures, different things. But mystery grab bags are cool. We've done jewelry. Some people have made jewelry, ornaments, Christmas cards, you name it. We've seen a lot of different cool things come up with from the Christmas market. This one was one of my newer ones. We called it Memorializing Empathy. So this came from an idea I had. I went on a trip to Washington, D.C. There's an organization called STEAM in the Park. It's a pretty small organization, but they do professional development at national parks is what they do. So you go and you get to be in the national park for a week and do different programming there. You write some content for the park rangers, for the education rangers as part of why you're there. So I've been on a few trips, but I went to one to DC, and my idea that I came back from was monuments and memorials. I was like, I love a monument and memorial. I love to go to DC and see all these beautiful things. And so we had a lesson that was a Quaver lesson about empathy in action. And so it talked about how people have used their empathy and made large impacts. So it gave examples of like Mother Teresa and a couple other people, and how they used their empathy to make large scale. So the kids had to look at people that they liked, and they had to tell me how they used their empathy to care for other people and what it was that they did. And then they got to make monuments for them. And so we looked at examples from their social studies that they had looked at, so different people that they had learned about in social studies, different events. World War II is one that they learned about. And they got to look at virtual tours of that in Washington, D.C. And we talked about what were some pieces of those monuments and memorials that they could apply. So things like, sorry, I've just got water stuck. I'm not going to cry. It's just stuck in my throat. But like pieces of grass and flowers, architecture, quotes, different things like that they could put in their monument. Statues. It didn't have to be a statue. We talked about how the World War II monument is water. It's a reflecting pond. So how could they create this to honor someone who had used empathy on a large scale? One of them was, I can't remember who they did. I can't read it right now. It might be Taylor Swift. But they just talked about like philanthropic work. I did not shoot down some of these ideas. If they could tell me how this person showed empathy, they could do this thing. One of them, I had Jesus up there. I had Beyonce. I had Nicki Minaj. We had some different ones. There was a couple I had to say, really dig deep on if that was true or not. But they got to do the research to see how these people used empathy. So they got to look at people that they cared about. People that were in movies, people that were their favorite singers. Some of them went back and looked at people in history that they had learned about in science and social studies. So some of them did go back and were like, I really liked that person in science and social studies. We also encouraged them to think about authors, like making those ELA connections. Who are some authors that you've really enjoyed? We have in our backyard, there's a statue. It's been drama, and his name is evading my brain. Who wrote Roots? Thank you, Alex Haley. I could have told you his name 30 seconds ago. Now I can't find it. There is a statue of Alex Haley that we can see from our school window. So we talked about Alex Haley a lot and how his book impacted so many people. And that was a real life example that our kids walk by every day because the playground's right there that they go to and see that Alex Haley statue. So we pointed back to like, who were maybe some authors that you've read that you could look up? Either how their book changed people on a large scale, or maybe they did something that helped people on a large scale. But they really got to, very free for all, think about who was somebody important to them. How did they show empathy? One of the coolest, weirdest ones I got this year was a video game creator. I still don't know what this video game is, but they could show me evidence of this video game showing empathy, and that's all that I cared about. Like that was the task. They could do it. They found the research. They proved their point. I still don't know what this video game is, but it exists. And they made their monument or memorial about them. But they had to think about things. They had like a small area of what they could build this on. So I cut out a piece of cardboard and said it needs to be in this space. You're building a scale of this. You're not building a full monument and memorial. You're building this as an idea that you could pitch to somebody to actually build. So they got to build with cardboard, and they used hot glue guns, and they could have paper and markers, and they were able to label things of like, oh, this would be grass or this would be water. Like they had to make it and label like, this is what this would be, this is what this would be. They had a blast doing these, and we had some really, really cool ones that popped up. So that was one that it came from a Quaver lesson that was in our curriculum that was required for us. And I just built upon that to do this lesson and made some social studies connections, which was cool. So what ideas have sparked for you today? So what are some ideas that you have gotten from today?
I really liked I wrote all of them down, but I really liked the sticker one because that's super simple and the kids get to be creative. I liked the market that you did and the memorializing empathy. That one, I think, could be really good done in conjunction with, some social studies lessons.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's one of my favorite cross-curricular connections ones because you can, when I gave the examples of the monuments and memorials, I was able to go to those teachers and say, who have you learned about this year? And then I looked up those monuments and memorials. So we made a connection back to people people and events that they had already learned about in social studies. So that was a good connection, but also a lot of them came up with new people because of the people they learned about in social studies. Anybody else?
I'm in a middle school, and it's very difficult for me to go into classrooms. We won't talk about it, but I really enjoyed, all of them are very nice. I like the curricular ones, but the one that I could see us using kind of like right away this year was the mindfulness or the growth mindset one, because I've done something similar, like an internship and practicum and all this like years ago with like anxiety and something similar, but it's so quick, it's so simple. It's something we can do as we're doing our intro lessons. We can just scribble while we're talking, and then we can do something at the end. So that was like a very kind of instant, like easy way to kind of incorporate this with everything else.
Anybody get any ideas like, I'm not going to use that lesson, but this gave me an idea of, I'm going to go talk to this person, or I'm going to try to make a connection with this team?
And a lot of elementary schools in our district, we are part of the Related Arts team. And so when you brought up that piece, I was like, oh, okay, I already have a good relationship with our art teacher and our STEM teacher. And so one of the new ideas I'm wanting to bring to my school this year is a coping skills fair. And so collaborating with them on using art therapy and making those desks tools so that our younger babies are able to self-regulate and use those, because we don't have common corners in every room. Yeah. And so it started getting my wheels turning in my head on how I can collaborate and build those connections and let them see the overlap for next year.
Awesome. And I love that you shared that of like, this sparked my idea. Things that are going to work for me are not going to work for everybody, and that's okay. Every school is different, every building is different, but my hope is that as I shared things that did work for me, you can take a piece of that and spark an idea of something that would work for you or address a need that you have. Like, I have this need in my building, and I can see how I could address that with this piece, right? So yeah, and I definitely think, even if you walk away today with, I'm going to go talk with that person to collaborate, I hope that that's at least something you leave with today, because some of my best ideas come from sitting down and talking with somebody else and us coming up together and building off of each other's excitement and ideas. Anybody else?
So I'm one of the students in the graduate school program for school counseling, and I do want to say, as someone who is very step-based, I really did like how the engineering design process was so, like, checkpoint. I'm very, like, structured. I have to have structure, and I also like to teach structure, and so I feel like that's going to help so many students to be able to say, okay, so here's what I did to get to point A to point B, and feel confident about themselves. That's what I really liked about this one.
Good. I love that. I have actually, as I've taught the engineering design process and implemented it in teaching, I use it when I'm planning lessons sometimes, or when I'm planning events, or like we had a Careers on Wheel event the other day where we had different community cars, like people that worked with a vehicle. They came and parked. Kids came out, they got to talk to people that ran the vehicle. We had an ambulance and a fire truck and a dump truck and a trash, all those different things. But as I planned that event, my first ask was, how do I have a career fair that's not boring to kindergartners? That was my first question, because the kindergartners love to walk around and get all the stickers from all the tables, but they don't remember what those tables were. They don't remember who was there and what was happening. They just got a sticker. So that was my beginning ask. So it's some things that I use the engineering design process to solve problems in my programming. So like for that, how can I make this more engaging? I thought about it. Other schools in the area had done similar touch a truck events. I was like, I'm going to do this. Plan, created the event. And then after it, I sat down and thought about, how am I going to improve this event? How am I going to do this better, change this up, do this differently next time to make this a better event? So I have started using the engineering design process in making choices in my programming, for sure.
When we take a cross-curricular approach, not only does it benefit the children who connect their classes, but it can benefit the teacher-counselor relationship, because counselors are learning what teachers are doing, but teachers then, conversely, are learning what counselors are doing. Absolutely. And maybe can understand it and honor it better.
Yes, 1,000%. And it's given me perspective of some of the things. I always joke, I met with my new principal, and we joked about how I kind of feel like I'm the middleman. Like, I'm in the classroom, so I know what's going on with the teachers, and I understand their struggle a little bit because I'm teaching, and I see what it's like to teach a group of kindergartners because I'm in there at least 10 times a year. but I'm also in those admin meetings, and I'm also in those 504, I'm also in all those meetings. So I see both sides. So I feel like the middleman sometimes. Sometimes I'm the one that people come to process between the two. But it's given me, even being someone who goes into the classroom and pushes in the classroom regularly, the more I have collaborated with teachers, the more I have learned to respect and understand. And it's also helped me to give feedback. I don't know about everyone else. We have a behavior team that I assist on. I'm not in charge of behavior, but I get to give feedback on how we address behavior. So making sure it's through a trauma-informed lens. I am not the one that's doing the discipline. That's not an appropriate thing for us to do, but I am able to give feedback on how we do those things so that they're trauma-informed. And one of the things that we talk about is classroom management strategies with that, how you set up a classroom. So sometimes it is me that goes in and talks with teachers about their classroom management and how they're setting up the classroom and what they're doing and all those things. And I will say, the more I've collaborated with teachers, the more open they are for me to come in and do that feedback. They see me more as a partner than a satellite whenever I do those collaboration pieces. And so they're definitely much more open to my feedback and to that collaboration when I am the one that's reaching out and doing it, for sure. All right, thank you guys so much. You've been a great audience, very interactive. You all weren't, I didn't feel like I was talking to the wall back there, so thank you guys so much for that. I hope I was also not boring. I hope you enjoyed it. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Emily.